I want to tell you something about where performance identity actually starts, because most conversations about it start with the career, the workplace, or even climbing the corporate ladder. But that's not usually where it actually begins. By the time you get to that place, it's already been running for years. For me, it started much earlier. Debutante programs, boarding school, competitive college prep environments where the architecture was designed around what you can produce and how well you can perform. It was all designed around producing a specific kind of woman that was created to operate in a specific kind of world. And I was really good at it. Not because I was intentionally or consciously performing, because at that age, I thought it was all normal. You just think that's who you are. And I think that's the really tricky thing about early conditioning, is because you don't know that it's conditioning. It feels like identity, and it's not until much later, often after that first major rupture or disappointment, that moment when the life that you worked so hard to build no longer feels like it's yours anymore. That's that moment when you stop and wait and look around and you're like, who chose this? The high achiever was someone that was almost always placed very early in environments that rewarded excellence, usually in specific and physically, materially tangible ways. She learned to be excellent at playing someone else's game before she was even old enough to know that a game was even being played. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, it's just an adaptation, and a very sophisticated one at that. The discipline and intelligence that you get from living this kind of life is very real. The capacity for excellence is very real. But what was also built quietly without your consent was the belief that your worth was attached to your ability to perform those skills, that who you are is inseparable from what you produce. Inside of your identity reclamation year, the first phase is awakening. We don't start with the current business problem or career transition. You have to start with the root in the original room, at the first identity that was handed to you before you had the language to really understand what was being formed, or even really had the language to question it. Using a methodology that's rooted in body intelligence, which includes things like human design, somatics, and neuroscience, we examine what was installed. This is self-discovery. And we begin rebuilding the framework that was always yours beneath it. And depending on where you are in your journey, I highly recommend working with a professional licensed therapist as another tool in your toolkit on this journey. That excavation, that self-discovery is where the real work begins, and you cannot skip it. If you want true, lasting transformation, you have to look at the framework within which you were built. Looking at that is where everything else becomes possible. What we're dissolving is the belief that who you are is inseparable from what you produce. It's not getting rid of the excellence, it's rewriting the equation and the result. If you know that this is your origin story and you're ready to trace it all the way back and build from what it is that you find, that is exactly what this container is designed for. I'll leave you with this. What was the earliest room that you were prepared for, and whose vision of you did it reflect?